First, I want to kind of talk about a little background of why managing, why keep calm. Keep calm and teach art, we all know. Teaching art is not just about teaching art. Teaching art is about so many different things. And I never realized how much classroom management was one of those other things that I didn't get enough information on in order to do successfully. I felt really confident about writing lesson plans. I felt really confident about the content and relationships and working with kids. But then all these, when I couldn't predict it, when I couldn't plan it, when something just happened, like a kid just starts laying on the floor and won't move and you don't really know what to do, then I was like, all right, there's no manual for this and I'm a planner, so what do I do? And it's not about, with classroom management, it's not about a manual. It's about having this toolkit, this bag of tricks up your sleeve, so you can keep pulling one after another out until you find something that works. And no one ever told me that it would be such an uphill battle just to teach the art concepts, that the students wouldn't just walk in quietly and sit down and start listening. And I guess I kind of knew that, but there's so much more to teaching art. I also kind of chose classroom management as a hot topic for all art teachers because your students change. Whether in your first year or your 20th year, you might get this group of kids that are throwing you curveballs that you've never seen before. And just because you're a veteran teacher doesn't mean you have all your management solutions figured out. And so I think it's a message that can be heard throughout. When I would drive home from school every single day, I wouldn't base my worth as a teacher on the great lesson that I taught or the great principal evaluation I had. I would only think about, for some odd reason, were the kids good today? Was I feeling chaotic? Did cleanup go as planned? Were we behind? I felt like my days were measured by the way the students behaved. And that was so wrong. And it took me a while to get past that. My worth isn't measured by student behaviors. And it was also something that I was letting out of my control manage the way I felt about my teaching. And you know, there are some statistics out there, and I don't know the exact numbers, but that there's a percentage of teachers that quit the profession every year, and classroom management is one of the huge reasons that they do leave the profession, because they weren't prepared for that. And so today I'm going to give you a toolbox of 10 strategies that I think help make a well-rounded classroom management plan. There'll be a little something for everyone. So strategy number 1 is make a plan and stick to it like glue. So classroom management plans seem very formal, and you probably have thought about, I have my rules, I know what I'm going to be asking of the students. That's the easy part, writing your classroom rules and making a nice bulletin board, putting it up, saying it at the beginning of the year. But sticking to it like glue is the second component of it. That's the hardest. Because as we know, working with students, consistency is key, because students don't always have consistency at home. We are the consistency for them. And so if you blurt out during my demonstration, that's a warning, and then you let 5 students blurt out and don't give them warnings, you're not sticking to your plan like glue. But then if you only catch the one naughty kid who's always doing it and give them a warning, but not the good kid who blurted out, even though that was just, they just blurted, but you didn't give them a warning, then you're not sticking to it like glue. And this is really hard because sometimes there are exceptions, and I get that. But if you make exceptions for certain kids and not others, we do that in the back of our mind. It's just what we do. Like, oh, little Gracie never really says much, and she did it this time, but all the other kids are watching. And what they're seeing is, oh, so maybe I can get by with it. Maybe how many times will it take? And so this sticking to it like glue is really important. And it's really hard, but it'll pay off in the end. And so I advise a simple management plan, whatever works for you. Mine were just 3 rules. Respect the supplies, respect the students, and respect the teacher. And so, kind of my bottom line was, is another student impacting the learning of another student? And that was always kind of my cop-out. I had a letter that I sent home to parents here, and I recommend it. It's very powerful, and I like to keep the management in the art room. Not send it back to the classroom teacher, not to contact your principal. Our principal said, I don't want to see much of your management issues. She said, I want you to handle it. If it's really bad, call me. And so we really had to do a lot in our classroom. She also was really supportive. So I would send a letter home that checked off which rule that the student broke, and I hate using rules, but really expectations for the art room. And then the parent had to sign it and return it. so that there was no question where, well, they're fine in there, and they go to the classroom teacher at conferences and say, well, they do fine in art and music and PE, so why is the classroom teacher telling me they're misbehaving? Well, because art, music, and PE, we don't have a lot of time necessarily to send these things home and to do all of this. So we are supporting that classroom teacher by sending documentation. It's documentation. And it's also, I had them returned and signed to me, and if it didn't, I may have had to make a call. But it just shows that the parent knows, and maybe that one little thing they could say to the student would help. Because sometimes when students get into art, whether they're middle schoolers or high schoolers, they feel like it's a time to relax, to slough, to have fun. Because it is fun, but it's not a time for that. And we don't do anything to promote that, but students just get that feeling when they walk in. They just, have you ever noticed they're like walking super quietly in the hallways, and then the second they come into art, it's like, ah, and they start talking. And so you set those expectations. I also had the letters ART that I use. I used this in middle school as well. Actually, they needed it much more. And if the students were really chatty, because I found, okay, I like students to talk in the art room. We've all probably know that it's great to chat. But their voices just get louder and louder and louder and louder. And I would walk by the other classrooms, and they were just sitting and reading, and it was quiet. And I walked by, and I'm like, they can be quiet? I didn't know it. And I just felt like, what am I doing wrong? I was always blaming myself. Why can't my art room look like the classroom? Why are they sitting and doing what the teacher asked, and why is it so hard for me? And I was hard on myself. And I talked with my principal about this in my evaluation, and she said to me, the art room shouldn't look like the classroom. If it does, it's a problem, because this is the only place they get what you can give them. And I thought to myself, oh, I was spending so much time trying to be the classroom, trying to get the students to just be quiet, but that's not what art is about. But you also have to be able to think and not have a headache at the end of the day. And so I would take the letter A if the students were allowed. I'm sure you have a similar type of thing like this, or you've seen it. Take the R if they were keep the voice levels kept up. Take the T. And if we lost all the letters, students had to be quiet for the rest of art, whatever was left, whether it was a half an hour or 10 minutes. And that seemed to work really well, and it got the point across. After being in the same place for several years, it became routine. So those are some of my first strategy for just getting a plan in place and sticking to it. And you can change it around, but if you change too much, students will start to notice that maybe you're not taking it too seriously. Strategy number 2, teach your routines. This is one of my very favorite strategies because we make a lot of assumptions. We assume that because students have done X, Y, Z in their classroom or in the hallway, that when they come into art, they're just going to do them. And we assume that when we say clean up or wash the paintbrushes, students know how to do it like we do. But you can't just say clean up. You can't just say wash out the paintbrushes. You can't just say line up. Teaching lining up in the art room is a mini lesson that you go over when you have an extra 5 minutes, and you have the students practice, go back, practice until they can do it right. And that is your little mini, you show them, you model, you get a few students, you make a big deal out of it, you kind of get funny, you even stand there and say, is this what standing in line looks like? You know, and they'll have it ingrained in their head. When you model, teach, and make it a mini lesson, they will start to take it more seriously. So whatever, kind of think in the back of your head, what are the biggest management problems I have? What are students, I say one thing and they do another. That becomes a mini lesson for the 10 minutes the next time. And if students don't do it correctly, you have them practice until they can show you correctly. I even had one group come in at recess and show me how you walk into the art room and show me. And they did not like that because until they could get it right, and we practiced for like 2 minutes on the carpet sitting quietly. If you can't do it in art class, then you'll come do it during recess. And that was an extreme case. It was a really doozy of a class, and it helped, maybe for a couple days, but it helped. So another great way to teach your routines is through video. I don't know about you, but especially if you're teaching middle school, sometimes you're repeating the same thing a lot. And you get sick of hearing the sound of your own voice, and so do the students. And so making a video that you can replay about how to wash out brushes, well, something you'll use with every class all the time, and playing it will seem really cool to the students because it's not just you, it's a video. Strategy number 3 is vary your instructional methods. We are teaching is such a verbal society. We are always talking to the students, telling them what to do. Sometimes they're watching us demonstrate, but that's only 2 senses. And the more we can incorporate other senses into our teaching, the more we will have different outcomes, because students, again, get used to that routine and then it gets stuck. So the first one I want to talk about is the cards in the middle there, the color cards. I had a set of cards, and I would keep them in a little 3M container by my door. And I would hold up the red card for lineup, and if I held up the red card, I would say nothing, because I'm varying my method. I'm not talking. And so I'm holding up the red card, and they're cleaning up, and all of a sudden the students are like, oh, the red table, it's time to clean up. She's holding up the red card. And I wouldn't say anything. I'd just stand there until the red table was in line. Switch the card to purple. And so suddenly they're looking up, and then when it was purple, when I became silent, they became silent. Because I'm that teacher that was like really excited and upbeat, and I would just start getting, as I elevated my energy, they elevated their energy. And when you whisper, they'll start to get quiet too, because they're going to match you. Have you ever noticed that? And it's just, but we forget to use it because we're so like, we got to get this done, we have 45 minutes, and we got to go, and it's cleanup time, and I would elevate. And I didn't have a door, so it was kind of a problem because it was loud, and I was worried about it. So these color cards are great for doing assessment questions, lining up, anything coming down to transitions, and wow, it's amazing. It was like magic. It was just, all I had to do was stand there. And my energy, I found, when I went home to my family, I had more energy because I had tactics that didn't take every single bit of my energy away. The next one is just different ways to get students' attention without talking. So get some I like to call them little attention-getting kit. Make yourself an attention-getting kit, whether it's a little desk bell, which was one of my favorites, a chime, a wood block, a magic wand that you ding and it goes boom. Anything, there's even this, I'm not going to think of what it's called, but it's like a big circle, and it's like one of those chimes or gongs, and there's all these different little fun things you can get. So I would recommend getting a little trick of that and then change it out so students are not always immune to the same sounds. When I would ding the bell 3 times, that indicated cleanup. It was kind of like, training a dog in a way. 3 dings means cleanup, but it really did help students to feel like they knew what was happening next, which helps you. The next instructional method is one word. So we use a lot of words as teachers, and we repeat and we repeat. But my question I want to ask you is, do you have to repeat to get the same message across? How many words can you shorten down your message to get the same message across? And some researchers would say 1 word. So if you've already taught brush washing, if you've already taught how it goes, and you notice the brushes are still not being washed properly, you could just hold up the brush and say, brush, or the glue bottles are a mess. You could just walk by the table and say, glue. Do you need to say, now this is how we do the glue. Remember, we twist it down, we put on the thing, we do this, and how much energy and time is that taking you? You're depleting yourself. So just by saying glue, they're going to know what you mean because you taught them how to use the glue. So try the 1-word trick. It's kind of liberating because it saves your energy, and students will pick up on it. They know. Strategy number 4, songs, chants, and whole brain teaching. As a high school art teacher, you may not feel like you want to break out in song. That might be quite annoying, but sometimes it can work. And so these are not just for elementary, I don't think. I think there can be some fun ways, especially when you really need their attention to break out in song. But even just little chants, like I will admit my cheerleading days inspired a few things for the classroom. So I would make some little chants, like when it was time to transition and show them the next step. I had such a hard time getting students to actually stop working and see what was going to happen next. Because you have about half the class ready to move on, half not, and you want to get them moved on, but so you have to stop everyone. So you could do one of 2 things. You could have them transition to come around to the demonstration table or down to the carpet and get them out of the way so they don't touch the stuff. But the transitions gave me stress. The more I transitioned students, the more I felt like there was more management. So I liked the students to stay in their seats, but I wanted them to look up at my projector to see what was happening next. So I would do a little song like, next step, next step, next step, last time, eyes on me, first grade. You have little chants like that, but wow, after all those next steps, they could get their stuff put down, they could actually get ready to go, look up, and feel like they had a warning, because kids get panicky when you make them stop making art. And so I have some links that I'm going to send you in the handout with me doing some of them, so you can enjoy those. And then Whole brain teaching is another philosophy in education, and whole brain teaching is about the physical, because we know that when students have a physical motion with a direction or a verbal, they will remember it differently. So whole brain teaching is a strategy to help your kids be engaged physically throughout your entire lesson. So you might be sitting and you might be on the floor with the students, and every time you say, and what are the primary colors, and you teach them a sign like red, and they have like a sign for red and blue, and if they understand, they make a little thing like this, and if they don't, they give you a thumbs down as they're talking. This little thing you teach them so that you have that interaction, so they're not just, you're the sage on the stage, and they are just listening. They're interacting, they're giving you feedback. And so there's a video that I've also linked on whole brain teaching with a teacher doing that in action, because I think it's kind of brilliant. And it's kind of, again, training the students with these little prompts, but they come to grow it and like it with consistency. Strategy number 5 is mastering visual cues. I talked a little bit about this with the color cards, because the color cards helped you to just have a visual, not a verbal prompt. But there are so many cool visual cues you can learn about. The first is a cleanup map. Do you realize that the visual posters you have around the art room are being watched closer by your students than you realize? When you change a poster, when you hang up one new thing, how many kids walk in and say, hey, she changed that, you have that up there, and it wasn't. They are looking and looking and looking when they come into your art room. And I would leave the same bulletin board up sometimes for like the whole year and just put a few different things. Kind of a disservice, because students learn from the things that are on our walls. They look at them and they take them as important. So why not have some of your management strategy come from that? If you want to put a how to wash a paintbrush map or directions by the sink, if there's a lineup one by the door, if maybe it's something really difficult like the printmaking process, and you have a map that helps them understand, first we get out this, then we do this, this is what it looks like, and you put those on the tables laminated. Anytime you can give students that extra visual will cut down on them asking you. And when it cuts down on them asking you, you can stay calmer, because our energy isn't getting depleted. Another is the time timer up at the top there. A time timer is an actual product, and what it does is it visually displays how much time is left in art class. There's also an app that you can put onto your iPad and maybe just project it right up onto the screen. And I really like, it kind of was designed, I believe, for special needs students who needed that extra bit of, transitional heads up. But I believe that it could be great for the whole art room. You can say 10 minutes left, and they can look up on the time timer and see in red how much time is left. Another trick is labeling using those visual cues. I had shelves, and I would label the back of the shelves with pictures. And so where the back of the glue shelf was a picture of a bottle of glue, so students, even kindergartners, knew where to put the glue. And that was very important, because I didn't have any time between my classes, and so you could definitely just know that this is where it goes, and they could do it all themselves. And then the last one is one of my favorites. It's I don't know about you, but I struggle as an art teacher with, should I leave supplies on the table or not? Because if you leave the supplies on the table, at least the most popular supplies, you don't have to pass them out every time and they're ready to go. But at the flip side is, if you have stuff on the table, they're going to mess with it, and the erasers will be mutilated before 3 weeks are done in school, because they do that. And so what is it? I've done both. And when I transitioned back to putting glue, scissors, pencils, and Sharpies, yes, Sharpies, on the table permanently, because we used them for so many things, I was tired of passing them back. I had a little picture that I laminated and Velcroed to the side of the basket of how it should look when it was organized. And when we were cleaning up, I would just have to walk by the table and say, picture. And if their picture didn't look like the bin, they couldn't line up. And some days this got a little lax, but wow, any student can look at a picture and see. And even if your high schoolers are always throwing the brushes down or putting the paint back as fast as they can, that picture might help of how it should look. And it was just a really powerful strategy and helped me stay sane. Strategy number 6 is building independence. We have a culture of students who are dependent upon constant reassurance, constant feedback, and constant need for approval from us. You've seen it. Does this look okay, Mrs. So-and-so, Mr. So-and-so? Look at this. How do I do this? Can you help me? I can't do it. I don't remember interrupting my teachers as much back in school as students interrupt teachers today. Do you agree? I mean, I would never have interrupted the teacher. I was just like, you know. And so I feel like it's something about this next generation of just it's so child-centered that it's become too child-centered. And so how can we help them, shape them for the world? How can we build their independence? They can rise to the challenge. So one of my favorite strategies is the Ask 3, Ask Me. And all of these pictures, I have links for you in the handout to an entire, longer explanation with more examples, so you can go deeper. Ask students that before they ask you a question, because I would give an instruction, and I'd have 5 kids come up to me asking me a question about it, and I couldn't even pass out the supplies because I was like bombarded. And I thought I was pretty clear, but they didn't want to listen. They knew that I would be there to answer it later. And that's kind of, according to one philosophy, not what teachers should do. We're helpful. We are helpful to students, yes, but are we helping them too much? So before a student could ask me a question, for example, then they would have to ask 3 friends first to see if the friends could answer. And if they still couldn't, or it was something the friend just couldn't help with, come and raise your hand and be sure to ask me. And just that permission that I'm not the only one in the classroom that has all the answers was liberating. It saved a lot of units of energy throughout the day. Another was the bathroom pass. You can see it's boys and girls, and it's a whiteboard. So how many times does using the restroom and getting a drink at any age level interrupt our instruction? It interrupts what we're doing, and it can take away from what we're meant to do, and that's teach art. All of these things. The goal here is for you to get to more teaching art, because that's what we're here to do, and this stuff kind of gets in the way. And so if a student had to use the restroom, they would just sign bathroom, so there was no interruption. Sign language is awesome. If you teach them some basic signs, then you can communicate. If I'm reading a story and a student does like this, it may not draw as much attention to them either, and they might go like this. And so you just nod, and then all the other kids may not ask to go because it wasn't this, can I go to the bathroom? Because once kids hear that, then they all want to go. And then they would write their name under the boys or the girls, and I would only let one boy and one girl go at a time. And why I had them write their name is you can have a pass to have them take a pass out, but do you really remember who you sent to the bathroom? Let's be honest. You don't, because you were just like so busy and you sent somebody. Well, what if there's a fire drill? What if there's a tornado drill? I'm from the Midwest, What if something happens, you have to evacuate? How do you know who's gone? And so when they write their name up there, you can instantly see we're missing so-and-so. And if it's a lesson that's taught, then hopefully they would come and erase their name, and that system would be in place. Nothing's ideal, but I really like this one as an alternative to a bathroom pass. Plus, I don't want to think about all the germs when you take something into the bathroom. And then the third one is labeling with numbers. A really fabulous high school art teacher provided this strategy. And every student at the beginning of the year would get a number. Maybe some of you do this as well. And it was their number. And so if you were number 4, you get the number 4 packet of supplies. You use the number 4 scissors. You use the number 4 X-Acto knife. You sit at number 4 at the table. Sounds kind of like the military or something. But it helps students because they would respect the supplies. And in the high school level, you could keep track of some really expensive drawing tools and supplies. Because if number 4 was assigned to Sally, and they kept getting destroyed, there was no one else to blame but anybody who had number 4 assigned to them at any class period. And so that was it helped with the consistency. Also for sharp things like X-Acto knives, you want to know what is in your room and what has left your room. And a lot of students will walk out with Sharpies too to do like graffiti on their notebooks and things like that. So if it was all put back in the labeled numbering system, then you would know whose was whose. It might be a little extreme, but if it's a problem for you, setting that up at the beginning of the year, the beginning of the month could be really helpful. Strategy number 7, ditch the incentives. This is kind of a controversial one, but I'm going to try to make my case for why I think incentives didn't work for me. My school, and I'll give the resource for this after, but the book that I love is called Dream Class by Michael Linson, and it is linked in your handouts. And his classroom management philosophy is just fabulous, and I found it connects even to art teachers really well. That's the book that I use in the online class Managing the Art Room that I teach. And so He says that doing the right thing is just the right thing, and that you don't need to be rewarded for doing the right thing. That we're saying good job too much and we're pumping kids up, and if you save those things for the really big things will actually become a big deal. Your praise is given selective enough that it means something. And that's hard because you look at the art, oh, that's so good, you don't want to be negative about it, but it's an interesting philosophy. So my school started PBIS, Positive Behavior Intervention Systems. Maybe has anybody's school done that before? And that is so rewards based. So you get these tickets if you're good, and you hand out these little things, and you can cash them in for different things. And I think it works up to a point, but then at some point the tickets start to mean nothing, and at some point it's just, I found it quite distracting. I mean, I had 40 minutes, and I'm supposed to also hand out tickets. I can't even get them paint in their hands because I was having the kids that were talking too much, and there's just so much going on. And so I chose, and I would do sticker charts too, and then they could get, I had one, my mentor, who's now retired, she would do art parties. And so the kids would earn so many stickers, and then they would have a day where they'd watch Disney movies and eat candy. And I was like, this was back, a little bit. That would not fly now. That's instructional time now. But it was kind of funny. It's like, okay, we're watching Disney movies, and I missed the point there. Did it help? I don't know. But the sticker chart, too, it was my fault. It's not about the kids, but I couldn't remember at the end of class every time to say, how did we do today? Did we get our sticker? Did we not? Because I couldn't control sometimes if cleanup was chaotic, or if we got behind, or if students were, and I felt like it was so out of my control, and I had so much pressure on myself to remember that every time, and then I wasn't being consistent and sticking to the rules, so I just ditched it all. And I just stuck with my 3 basic rules, made the art the reward, and sometimes I would make what we were already doing a reward. So we're going to do printmaking today. It's in my lesson plan. There's no question about it. But when they come in, I say, I have a really great opportunity for you today that you may or may not get to do, depending on how well you can listen to this. And it was going to happen either way. Maybe that's a little deceitful, but rewarding with art, because isn't art a beautiful reward? Isn't art in and itself something special for the students? So rewarding them with what they're already doing and making it seem as though it's a special privilege, because it is. Being in the art room is a special privilege. We get to do things with students no one else gets to. Who else gets to introduce clay to students? Who else gets to introduce how chalk pastels work? No one but us. Maybe the classroom teacher, but we're probably doing it at a much younger age and have a little more freedom with the supplies. So one of my middle school writers on our team did implement a sticker chart when she was gone for a week. She went on vacation, and her substitute was her mom. So she felt this obligation that the students were doing well, but she made this sticker chart here just for when she was gone. So when she came back, it helped her to see how the students did. I think that's a great use of it, using it in tiny little increments when you know things are going to be hairy. Maybe the week before holiday break it out. At that point, you're breaking out anything and everything you can because the students are just, blah. But I think there's a time and a place, but your life will be more simpler if some of the little systems can just go to the wayside and you can focus on the art, making it about the art. Strategy number 8 is one of my favorites, and it's try storytelling. So I love telling stories to my students, and that you probably do it all the time without realizing you're telling a story about something. But have you ever thought about intentionally using storytelling as a tactic to deliver your instruction? I introduced this lesson with a story because it's the hook. And it is such a powerful thing. Students are so burnt out from their math and their reading and the demands and the facts. What about a story? So there are 3 types of stories that I kind of broke down in my classroom to tell. And maybe it'll help you jar some memories of stories that you have. The first story is the historical story. So I, like all of you, and you're so fortunate to be so close to wonderful museums, probably have visited some museums or visited something of historical impact. And you can bring that into the classroom. So I would come in and say, I visited Grant Wood's house And I got to stand in the place where he painted American Gothic. And look, here's a picture of me standing in front of one of his landscapes. And I couldn't touch it because they don't let you do that in art museums, but I was so close, and he really painted that, and, making this big story up about, and it wasn't a story, it really happened, but do you share those things with your students as much as you could? Probably not. We keep our art world separate sometimes from our teaching world, and they really have to come together, because your students will start to think you're a total rock star when they see that you were next to a Grant Wood painting. And so those historical stories are super fun. The first time I ever saw Starry Night, this is how I felt. And then you introduce the painting. Wow, I should feel this way too. This is important. This is special. Mrs. Ballsley said that this is special. Number 2 is the process story. So how many times do processes kind of go awry? I'm going to use printmaking again because I feel like it's one of the more difficult things to do in the classroom. There's so many steps, there's so much mess, it's all new. And I would make a big story up when the students came in and say, and you could do this with middle schoolers too, or high school, last year's class did not use the supplies correctly, and you should have seen their art. It didn't turn out. None of their hard work turned out because this happened, and they put too much ink, and it went through, and you couldn't see the lines, and then they didn't listen and put it on the drawing, and it was just so sad. And I really don't think this will be a problem this year with this group. And telling them about what might have happened last year, even if you're exaggerating a little bit, telling them about how great it went and how they got to use an extra glitter supply or something with it, is about the process, the story of how the process could go good or bad, including that vocabulary and those details in that story to help them learn what they're going to be doing. And then the third story is when I was a kid. So I sound like, when I was a kid, we had to ride a horse and buggy to school, but I would love to tell about my art room because my elementary art teacher inspired me to become an art teacher. And I saved every piece of art that I did in elementary school because I wanted to do all those projects someday with my future kids because I wanted to be an art teacher since I was in 3rd grade, and I'm not kidding, I did. And so the cool part of it is, backstory, I'm now moved back to my hometown where my art teacher is still teaching elementary art. And so any of the videos you see on the Art of Education now are filmed in my old art room. So I'm going and filming videos and working and visiting her classroom and talking with her. And the other day she was like, Jessica, I bought your ebook on your website. I was like, you didn't have to buy it. I would have just sent it to you and given it to you. But so I'm back connected with my elementary art teacher who inspired me, and now I'm working and helping her in her room. And back to what I was saying, I would tell the students and pull out, I call them Ballsley originals. This is a Ballsley original from when I was in 4th grade. This isn't a sample that I made as an adult, because how intimidating is it when the students have the samples that are from you doing it? Because I can't do that. I'm no good. I'm not an artist. This was mine when I was a kid. You were really good for a 4th grader, Mrs. Ballsley. Oh, thank you. And we're going to do the same project. And here's my special example. You can come look at it, but you can't touch it. Anyway, you may not have your samples from when you were a kid, but you can bring out stories. The first time I made a pinch pot, I remember, and my mom kept it on the windowsill for 5 years, and all these types of things. So those stories, think about using them as your instruction, not as a, well, if I remember, I might say it, or it just happens. Put it into the lesson plan. Strategy number 9 is enlist help. We can't do it alone. If you think you can do everything that's involved with this profession by yourself, it's just going to be draining, and you'll start to drown because we are only one person. And I have extreme trouble asking for help. I just think I can do it, and I can do it better, and I can do it faster, but that's just not the point. What can you get help with? So there's 2 places I would advise enlisting help, and I'll start with parents. Maybe you have an awesome parent volunteer program set up. Maybe you don't want to go there. Maybe you're not sure. Maybe you did it one time, but the person didn't work out. I actually had a retired art teacher contact all the teachers in our district saying, I'm retired, but I'm missing the classroom. I'm looking to get in some volunteer hours. Would anyone like me to come once a week to their classroom? No one replied yes but me. Nobody replied. I'm like, are you people crazy? This is an art teacher. She knows how to prep the clay. She knows about the supplies. She knows when I say go cut the paper to this size because it's for this project, and you show her, she gets it. Wow, I had like an expert. And so she would come in and even help out a little bit, and then she would do extra tasks for me, that was a good volunteer. Of course, you can get the parent volunteer who, doesn't quite get it, but another thing that has been found through research is that parents don't just want to come in and cut lamination. They actually want to come help in the classroom, and they want to feel like they're making an educational impact when they're helping. So in the classroom example, setting a parent up in a reading group will be more beneficial to that parent and keep them coming back than just having them cut lamination out in the hallway. Now, the lamination still has to get cut, and so that's okay, but think about ways you can involve parents that actually get to the heart of what you're doing in the art room and actually get them doing more educational type tasks, and they will feel more rewarded and feel like they're helping more. Also, maybe consistency is key. So I had a clipboard, and it was the volunteer clipboard, and I would just write a little note, because if I was teaching and they showed up, I couldn't explain it all, and they knew where to go, and it was the same person all year, so that there was that consistency, because then it's going to drain you to keep training someone new all the time. And you can really get a lot done when you have help, the right help. Another place I would recommend enlisting help is from your students. Again, there's that kind of funny quote that says, never do anything that a kid can do for you. And I don't know how much I agree with that to some point, but I would like to still wash out the brushes because I finally found brushes I liked and I didn't want them to get ruined. So I was maybe the control freak in that way. But what can the students help with, and how can they help? And one big question I get is, what about kindergartners? How do you get them to help, because it's just crazy? So here was my trick for kindergarten. I would have, at the beginning of the year, one table, like the blue table, would just be the helpers in kindergarten. And then when a student was done with their art, they would put it on the drying rack or put it away and come down to the carpet, and I would have a game or a story that was kind of piggybacking off the concepts we learned going on with me. And only the blue table that day would stay back and clean up the whole room. Okay, that seems kind of unfair, right? But the next week, the red table got to clean up the whole room because I had taught them all how to do it. Then the next week, everybody came to the carpet, and the green table would clean up the whole room. And after so many weeks, every single table had a chance to clean up properly. They had practiced it. They knew it. It wasn't chaotic. You will not believe how calm your art room is when there's only 5 students cleaning up versus everyone cleaning up at the same time. And you're reviewing. You're maybe giving a quick formative assessment. You're talking about reflecting on the art day. You're getting to do that portion of it, and everybody still gets to clean up. By halfway through the year in kindergarten, I would recommend still, having more students help clean up. But if that one, just removing the kids from that experience, and it's amazing. It was like something that changed my kindergarten cleanup time. So if it works for you, just give it a try. Strategy number 10, stay organized and decluttered, which is easier said than done. But I was a teacher, and I've said this before, I had 2 schools, I had, stuff in my car, I had no prep at one of the schools, I was the art department coordinator as well. It was too much stuff. I didn't have a choice. I had a triangle-shaped art room with no storage closet, no door, and 1 sink. It just was, and I know some of you are in even different circumstances on carts, or I wonder if she's here today. I don't see her, but she told me yesterday, I don't have a cart. I have a cart on the 2nd floor, but I have 3 floors that I teach on, and the cart stays on the 2nd floor, and I have tote bags that I take to the 3rd and the 4th because there's no elevator. I said, you're not even art on a cart, you're art in a tote. That should be like a new website, support for art in a tote. But seriously, it's not funny. I mean, it's true. And so the less stuff you have, the less I believe that mental clutter and physical clutter go hand in hand. We spend like how many years of our life looking for things, by the end of our life. So digitizing some of your files, and I would even go in and I talked about this yesterday, but it's kind of funny. The samples, you create like half a sample to demonstrate, and then you put it and save it. And I would open up this folder, and there was 12 half-done examples of Aboriginal painting. And I was like, why am I keeping all these? And so I pared down all of my teaching files into one file folder. And I digitized, I'm still working on digitizing it all because it's just too much clutter. Also, it's a respect thing too. We don't realize the administration, our principals, do you need to be organized to be a good teacher? No. Does it help sometimes? Yes. And when your principal walks in and your stuff is everywhere and your desk is piled up to here with papers and they can't walk through because there's all this stuff, what do you think that says about you to them? Now, do we really care what people think? If we're doing the right thing, it's okay. But there's that professionalism that the art teacher, we're constantly on that uphill battle. We don't innately get that professional demeanor sometimes from administration because we're the art teacher. And so by having some things organized, decluttered, keeping things streamlined, it may help with that in your life, and it will help your classroom as well. So just think about different ways that, do I really need this? And how can I pare down? That's 10 strategies, and I have some bonus tips because time seems to be the biggest issue art teachers write me about. Time. If I only had more time, I could blank. If I only had more time, we could get more art done. And I just don't have enough hours in the day for my family and for my students, and it's all part of managing an art room. So the first tip for an art teacher time savers is using your prep time wisely. Now, we all think that we use our preparation time really wisely, especially if we only get it once every other day. But do you? Did you go to put your lunch in the refrigerator and talk to 5 people and then fill your water bottle and then come back and then do this and then a student stops you and then it's 20 minutes into your hour and that's gone? And I know that seems really antisocial, but man, I would have a list and put my head down and it was like go time. Because guess what I wanted to do? I wanted to leave at a decent time and I wanted to get home to my family. And so I had to be super efficient, and what I could get done, I could get done. So really think about breaking down that time even in segments. The first half of my prep, I'm going to do this. The second half, I'm going to do this. Number 2, one strategy that works for me is checking emails at home. This might not work for you. This might add stress. But I found in the art room, there's a lot of physical stuff. I need to set up supplies. I need to dispense paint. I need to do all of these things in my huge office that I work in. And then there was this whole other job over there by the computer. I had files, I had emails coming in, I had paperwork to fill out, I had evaluation forms. It was like 2 separate jobs, don't you think? Like the paperworky side and then the like art teaching side. And so I tried to do the email computer stuff at home because I could, and I couldn't cut paper at home. And I didn't want to come in on the weekends. And so that for me was the sacrifice. When I could sit down after dinner, I could actually reply to the emails from the day. Because once I sat down at that computer at the end of the day, I never got up. You just want to stay there. You're tired. And so I just kept moving the whole day. Number 3, designate days for tasks. So Tuesday was kind of my grading day. And on my prep on Tuesday and after school, I would just grade artwork. So I didn't get behind in grading. Because I don't know about you, but grading artwork seems like the last thing I kept pushing off. And then I had a whole pile by the end of the semester for report cards. And so Tuesday was grading day. Friday was lesson planning day for the next week and getting supplies prepped. And once I made I didn't always stick to it, but once I made a little bit of rules for myself, my weeks had a rhythm, and I felt like I could stay on top of things because that urgency of like so much to do in so little time is kind of troublesome. Number 4, take half your lunch sometimes. So I love to go have lunch with the other teachers, and I needed that relief from kids, but sometimes it was just, once I got there, again, I didn't move, and then I had to go to recess duty and all these other things. So sometimes I would work through my lunch and eat a sandwich while I worked, and I'm sure I've talked to a lot of teachers, everybody has their methods, but if you're finding you're behind, it really helps to use that lunchtime, and then you can get home earlier, especially on the days you really need it. And then the last time is my to-do list secret. This is another productivity experts will tell you that big to-do lists are not something that is productive because all it does is overwhelm us. Do you ever walk out of a meeting and you feel more overwhelmed than when you came in because you got all these tasks to do? So the recommendation is one to-do list that's very long and comprehensive. And I would keep this and update it weekly. And it was like Artist of the Month program. I had to hang the artwork. I had to pick 5 artists. I had to print the letter. I had to send it out. There was bullets under each category. And every day in the morning, I would move 3 items from the master list to a sticky note and put it on my computer. Those were my 3 tasks today to help chip away at the bigger projects because you couldn't just focus on Artist of the Month program that day. You had 1,000 other things to do. And by not looking at that big list throughout your day, You feel less overwhelmed because I would beat myself up because I couldn't complete all that stuff, but I shouldn't have been able to complete all that stuff because I'm one person and that was a month's worth of work. So how do you chip away at it? It works for home stuff too, by the way. And it was a way to manage that to-do list, and productivity experts will say that that is a better way to do it. And I mean, we know it, but we just keep doing it because we have to get all this stuff done. And to end, I have some recommended resources, which I'll link to you in your handout. But there's that book, The Classroom Management Secret, and The Smart Classroom Management by Michael Linson. And his blog is called Smart Classroom Management, and it's the most practical and straightforward, no BS website you'll ever visit on classroom management. He knows his stuff. And I actually know him personally, and he asked me to do a review on the back of his second book, The Classroom Management Secret, so it's kind of cool because I'm on the back of the book as like the person that, because we've used his stuff so much, and it helps so many art teachers. Even though he's not an art teacher, I haven't found a really good management resource for art teachers yet, so I think his stuff transcends. We also, the Art of Education has a graduate class managing the art room. You can get 80 contact hours or 2 graduate credits for the course. It's a month long, and it helps you come up with that management plan, come up with your expectations, come up with things to help you make a cleanup map for the art room, and it's very practical. So those are some resources I personally recommend for management that you can go a little bit deeper. So I'd love to connect with you on any of these topics or other questions that you might have. I'm happy to take questions. I do think we're getting close to time. I don't have a clock right up here, but it has to be about there. I'm happy to stay back and answer questions or answer them to the whole group if we have time. And please send us an email, theartofed.com. We have Keep Calm buttons downstairs in our booth too if you haven't gotten one yet. But thank you for coming, and thank you for coming.